Do you ever long for those African-American holiday sweets nobody prepares anymore? They once flooded kitchens with coziness, sweetness, and kinship. When did we abandon tasting Christmas the way our ancestors did? Molasses loaf cake was the type of treat that didn't merely add sweetness to the gathering. It shared a narrative of surviving with whatever you possessed. In numerous African-American households, particularly across the South, processed white sugar was an uncommon treasure, and molasses transformed into the taste of festivity. Its profound, dark richness emerged from waiting and resilience, mirroring the identical principles that sustained families through difficult seasons. The thick texture and abundant spice were recognizable comforts that saturated kitchens with heat, even when funds were limited. Grandmothers calculated ingredients by instinct, not by measurements, and added a feeling of dignity that can't be duplicated from a recipe note. A piece of this loaf signified unity, a confection that could transform even a humble Christmas feel plentiful. The fragrance itself brought youngsters rushing, anticipating the instant the initial slice was served and the first morsel touched their lips. Molasses loaf cake wasn't merely a sweet, it was ancestry transformed into sugar and seasoning, showing every generation that richness doesn't need to originate from abundance. It can emerge from determination as well. Black walnut loaf was the embodiment of waiting and dedication, a confection that arrived directly from the branches. Households would collect black walnuts once the fall breezes knocked them to the earth. Fingers darkened from splitting the tough husks apart. The smell was natural and strong, saturating kitchens with a fragrance that could solely originate from something genuinely homegrown. This loaf wasn't delicate or refined, it was hearty, seasoned with spices that lingered in the atmosphere and brought everyone back to home. Black walnuts were frequently a present from the earth, not an item from a shop, and incorporating them was an expression of thankfulness as much as custom. When incorporated into a Christmas loaf, their nutty depth converted modest ingredients into something remarkable. Presented after lengthy church gatherings or during packed family feasts, it stood confidently on every sweet table. Each piece held the recollection of harvests, fingers, and souls that labored tirelessly for every dish. Few sweets nowadays taste this genuine, this grounded in the earth and the individuals who cultivated it. Black walnut loaf was beyond a formula. It was the taste of connection. Sweet potato custard was the sort of creation that didn't require adornment to seem like a festivity. Creamy, amber, and touched with cinnamon, it was a solace that extended back across generations of Black Southern cooking spaces. Sweet potatoes were constantly accessible, affordable, substantial, and able to shift into something magnificent with merely a touch of sugar and seasoning. Households baked this custard in weathered metal dishes, saturating homes with the aroma of nutmeg and caramelized richness. It was frequently the final creation into the stove, crafted from what remained after the tarts and loaves were finished, evidence that even remnants could be converted into affection. It was presented heated, typically after worship on Christmas Day, when everyone was clothed in their finest attire and joy overflowed across the gathering. The consistency was smooth and pudding-like, every mouthful dissolving on the palate and creating peaceful satisfaction. Sweet potato custard was a confection that embodied respect. It didn't claim to be elaborate, but it had no need to. It was sufficient to satisfy the soul, not simply the serving. Coconut stacked cake was a statement piece well before anyone spoke that phrase. Its lofty, pale layers rose like a tribute to waiting, honor, and the strength of domestic richness. For numerous African-American households, coconuts were a premium component, something uncommon, preserved for the festivities. When all energy went toward creating the day memorable, women shredded fresh coconut manually, grinding until their hands were sore, simply to produce that ideal cascade of white. The cooked frosting glistened like crystals, and when it blanketed the cake, it appeared like cold itself had entered inside the cooking space. It wasn't simply a sweet, it was craftsmanship, and it represented affection invested into each phase. When the blade cut through the tiers, it exposed soft golden crumb, delicate and luscious from country eggs and handcrafted butter. Coconut stacked cake was the focal point of Christmas gatherings throughout the South, reminding everyone that happiness could still soar upward, even when existence attempted to crush you. Vinegar tart was the wonder nobody anticipated. Created from shortage, it transformed the most basic kitchen essentials into something surprisingly refined. When lemons were too expensive or unobtainable, vinegar substituted. Its bite mellowed by sweetener and fat until it evolved into a zesty filling unlike anything else. African American bakers mastered this equilibrium between economy and taste, improvising without ever abandoning connection with imagination. The initial taste was sugary, then sharp, then soothing, the sort of sensation that made you stop just to savor it. Vinegar tart was evidence that the finest formulas frequently emerge from constraint, not plenty. During Christmas, when households extended every cent and every component, this tart delivered a feeling of honor and achievement. It didn't sparkle like an ornate dessert, but it had no requirement to. It was a victory in plain sight, a modest amber wonder created from resourcefulness. Molasses candy stretching wasn't just confections, they were recollections crafted by touch. In cooking spaces that carried scents of sweetness, and seasoning households would assemble around the heat to observe syrup bubble into a sticky golden strand. When the moment arrived, everyone from youngsters to elders oiled their palms and started the stretching. The heated molasses extended and gleamed beneath the glow, amusement flooding the space as threads of candy attached to digits and garments. This wasn't about flawlessness, it was about involvement. In an era before purchased sweets, candy stretching was as much a communal practice as they were dessert preparation. They converted frigid winter evenings into neighborhood assemblies, instances when struggle took a secondary role to happiness. The end result was shining, sticky, and just a bit irregular. Like existence itself, molasses candy stretching wasn't about what you consumed at the conclusion, but about what you created collectively along the journey. Blackberry preserve cake was the flavor of summertime preserved for December. Households who gathered berries in the warmth of July converted those containers of preserve into something enchanting come Christmas. The mixture was deep, thick, and aromatic with cloves and cinnamon, each morsel concealing a hint of fruit. Preparing one was a deliberate deed. The gradual mixing, the gentle combining, the anticipating, while the aroma saturated the dwelling. It wasn't a cake of opulence, but of recollection, delivering the essence of hotter days to the chilly center of winter. For African American households, this cake was a signal that loveliness could be maintained, that richness didn't vanish with the changing months. It was cut gradually, distributed abundantly, and consumed respectfully. The violet texture marked utensils and fingers, but nobody cared. Blackberry preserve cake was both history and now on a dish, a recollection transformed into richness. Cornmeal tea biscuits were the flavor of youth and the noise of amusement resounding through passages. Part cracker, part roll, they held the coziness of household in every amber rim. The cornmeal provided them texture and substance, a signal that even basic components could generate delight. Grandmothers prepared them for afternoon treats, congregation gatherings, and Christmas containers alike. The aroma of nutmeg and fat indicated something pleasant was approaching, and the initial taste always validated it. These small cakes didn't brag, they consoled. They represented a period when nothing was squandered, when affection was calculated in the attention it required to work, form, and prepare. Youngsters would take them off cooling surfaces, their fingers covered with fragments, and mothers would act not to see. Cornmeal tea biscuits were beyond dessert. They were a vow that richness could always discover its path back home. Raisin loaf custard with vanilla cream was evidence that nothing in the cooking space was discarded. Old bread transformed into a foundation for change, drenched in dairy, enhanced, and revived once more. Raisins contributed depth, swelling up in the warmth until they exploded with sugary richness. The custard cooked gradually, saturating the atmosphere with the scent of nutmeg and caramelized sweetener. And then arrived the finest element, the vanilla cream, silky and lustrous, drizzled over the heated custard like compassion itself. This creation held the pattern of ancient kitchens where imagination was the contrast between lack and plenty. At Christmas, it was frequently presented as the closing act. Basic, yet profoundly gratifying. Every bite was tender, reassuring, and remarkably sentimental. It was beyond a method to extend components. It was a method to extend happiness. Caramel stacked cake was the confection that required waiting and compensated dedication. The caramel coating had to be mixed over gentle warmth for what seemed like ages, and the fragrance of sweetener transforming golden was absolute bliss. One reckless instant and it would scorch, but when it emerged correct, it shone like honey. African American women protected their caramel formulas like treasures, each one somewhat distinct, refined over generations of Christmas feasts. The cake itself was soft and rich, but the coating was the essence of it, sugary, toasted, and just short of sharp. Presented on notable events, it was a representation of honor, evidence that talent and attention could convert a collection of components into craftsmanship. The initial piece sliced through the polished surface like crystal, exposing delicate tears that appeared to dissolve in the mouth. No manufactured dessert could ever equal it. Caramel-stacked cake was affection, effort, and heritage, all transformed into one stunning confection. Chess tart was the sort of confection that could hush a loud space with one taste. Luscious, creamy, and amber. It was basic yet luxurious, depending on nothing beyond eggs, sweetener, fat, and a hint of cornmeal. This tart was a subtle victory of southern black cooking spaces where frugality encountered sophistication. The mixture rose gently as it cooked, firming into a filling that glistened when portioned. Presented heated or cold, it was evidence that taste didn't require extravagance. It required attention. Chess tart consistently appeared at Christmas, frequently on the spread next to sweet potato tart or coconut cake. It was for visitors, certainly, but equally for the household who labored tirelessly all season and merited something that felt like compensation. The shell was crisp, crafted from nothing, the sort that crumbled beneath a utensil, but never beneath strain. And when that creamy filling contacted your palate, it seemed like returning home. Chess tart didn't attempt to dazzle. It had no requirement to. It already understood it was flawless. Fig jam cake held the flavor of kindness of folks exchanging containers of richness bundled in cooking cloths. Figs developed plump in gardens throughout the South, their sugary fruit converted into jam that endured through the cold season. Around Christmas, that preserve was incorporated into a deep-seasoned cake, abundant with cinnamon and nutmeg. Every portion was moist, aromatic, and packed with remembrance, each morsel a recognition to the earth and toil that created it achievable. Women blended batter carefully, weaving tails into every rotation of the utensil. When cooked, the cake emerged with a profound amber radiance, the fig jam dissolving into streams of richness. It wasn't elaborate, but it was valuable, transferred through families like a treasure. At festive assemblies, it rested modestly alongside showier sweets, yet constantly vanished initially. It was the flavor of cultivated prosperity, the richness that currency couldn't purchase. Fig jam cake wasn't merely nourishment, it was appreciation transformed into existence. Cooked cream was the southern relative of eggnog, silkier and milder, dispensed chilled into glass containers that sparkled beneath Christmas illumination. It was crafted with dairy, sweetener, and eggs whisked deliberately over the heat until it condensed just sufficiently to blanket the rear of a utensil. For African American households, cooked cream was beyond a beverage. It was custom in a vessel. Dispensed into containers, it delivered solace and recognition, offered to visitors with a dusting of nutmeg above. Some included a dash of vanilla or lemon peel, converting it into a private formula that no purchased container could ever match. It chilled on ledges while amusement floated from the adjacent space, guaranteeing a sensation of peace after a lengthy day of preparing. Youngsters drank it cautiously, relishing the coziness that remained even when cooled. Cooked cream was gradually crafted affection, the type that demanded both waiting and belief that richness arrives to those who remain patient. Peanut candy shattered like crystal when fractured, a noise that consistently declared the beginning of Christmas. Sweetener bubbled on the heat until amber and toasted peanuts were blended in rapidly, the aroma saturating the cooking space with roasted richness. You required bravery to prepare it, just a few moments too lengthy, and it would burn beyond salvation. But when it emerged correctly, it gleamed like honey, sugary and intense all at once. Every southern black dwelling had somebody who prepared it finest, someone whose candy fractured flawlessly between the molars. It was confection crafted with soul and warmth, intended to be distributed from containers decorated in fabric. The fragments adhered to your digits and occasionally your molars, but that only enhanced it. Peanut candy was a task of devotion created from ingenuity and offered as kindness. It wasn't purchased, it was achieved. Sorrel drink cake was the fusion of tropics and America on one festive spread. The crimson blossoms of dried sorrel, hibiscus were brewed into syrup, flavored with ginger and clove, and mixed into a luscious mixture that converted the cake a deep scarlet. For many African American households with Caribbean Caribbean heritage, this confection was beyond taste. It was character. It held the sharpness of hibiscus, the heat of seasoning, and the recollection of Christmases observed across waters. The fragrance was captivating, saturating cooking spaces with a smell equally botanical and blazing. Once cooked, it was coated with additional sorrel syrup, lustrous and aromatic, a confection that radiated like crimson crystal. Sorrel drink cake linked individuals to forebears who had utilized the identical components in a separate territory for the identical purpose to honor enduring another season. It was heritage in sweetener and seasoning, and every morsel brought back that tradition can journey distant, but it never diminishes. Pineapple inverted cake was an explosion of brightness on frigid December mornings. With its browned fruit circles and cherries glowing like gems, it delivered vibrancy to spreads that had witnessed too many beige sweets. Pineapple was unusual once, a special delicacy that came in tins and rendered even the humblest dwelling feel sophisticated. For African American households in the mid-century South, this cake was an emblem of aspiration and happiness, a small getaway transformed right into custom. The sweetener on the pineapples simmered into an amber coating, trickling down through the crumb until every particle was tender and vivid. When inverted out of the vessel, it was enchantment, sugary, shining, and dignified. Offered heated, it showed households that festivity didn't require to be magnificent to be lovely. Pineapple inverted cake was hopefulness on a dish, the guarantee of richness even in the sparsest of seasons. Apple layered cake was never hurried. It required waiting, tears, and devotion. Delicate circles of cake were layered one atop another, each coated with seasoned apple mixture that absorbed gradually into the texture. The extended it rested, the superior it became, which indicated it was prepared days before Christmas and protected cautiously until then. African American households in countryside communities understood the practice thoroughly, collecting apples, preserving them, cooking them into preserve that could endure the cold months. Every tier shared a tale of readiness and determination, and when the cake was ultimately sliced, it displayed not luxury, but purpose. The sensation was cozy and profound, cinnamon flowing through every morsel. Apple-layered cake wasn't crafted to amaze strangers. It was crafted to endure, to nourish, to console. It was a confection that reflected existence itself, constructed one deliberate tier at a moment. Traditional tea biscuits were the pulse of black Southern preparation. Tender, light cookies covered with remembrance. Their smell of nutmeg and fat was sufficient to make any youngster halt in their path. Every grandmother had her personal method of preparing them, some utilizing lemon, rind, others incorporating molasses or dairy. They weren't for exhibition, they were for household. Frequently prepared on Christmas Eve, they cooled on ledges as youngsters anticipated to grab one before nighttime. Each taste was delicate and mildly sugary, crafted not for opulence, but for fondness. The mixture was shaped with attention, sliced by touch, and cooked until the rims just touched bronze. Tea biscuits held heritage, reaching back to periods when sweetener was rare and richness had to be extended. They were beyond cookies. They were bond itself, containing tales no formula could ever express. Buttermilk tart was a modest wonder, silky, sharp, and amber beneath its fragile shell. The components were basic, but combined, they produced something remarkable. Buttermilk provided the filling its mild tanginess, offsetting the sugar flawlessly. For many African American homes, this was the tart that emerged when fruit was limited, but affection was plentiful. Prepared in worn tart pans, it rose somewhat, then calmed into silky excellence as it chilled. The initial portion unveiled the subtle aroma of vanilla and fat, gentle as a whisper. Offered after Sunday worship or on Christmas evening, it showed everyone that the finest sweets didn't require embellishment. They required attention, patience, and a touch of belief that something so modest could still seem heavenly. Buttermilk tart was the tranquil essence of Southern festive spreads, reliable, basic, and memorable. Handcrafted divinity confection was a cold season vapor you could grasp in your palm. Beaten from egg whites and sweetener mixture, it was as fragile as it was challenging. Excessive warmth and it solidified. Insufficient and it never firmed. But when crafted precisely correct, it was a wonder. Tender, pale, and touched with vanilla. African American bakers perfected the pattern of creating divinity by noise and sensation, relying on intuition beyond gauges. Each portion appeared distinct, but all held the identical guarantee of richness offered openly. Wrapped into containers covered with protective paper, it was delivered to folks, educators, and congregation companions. A gesture of kindness enclosed in sweetener, the confection dissolved like like vapor, leaving behind only coziness. Divinity fulfilled its title, a small portion of paradise from palms that had experienced plenty of difficult labor on ground. Sweet potato cream was the softer relative of tart, the sort of confection that murmured solace instead of declaring luxury. Silky, smooth, and touched with nutmeg, it was prepared in little pottery vessels that arrived heated from the stove, each one intended to be enjoyed gradually. African-American households valued sweet potatoes not merely for their plenty, but for how adaptable they were, a single harvest that could extend across the months. During Christmas meals, this cream emerged alongside cooked vegetables and cornbread, a peaceful conclusion to a banquet. Constructed on devotion and toil, the deep amber mixture glistened underneath a delicate golden surface, enhanced just sufficiently to satisfy but not dominate. The smell of cinnamon and fat saturated the space as it cooked, blending with the noise of amusement from kin gathered once again. Every bite held both richness and resilience, a small signal that modesty could still feel remarkable. Sweet potato cream was unassuming, certainly, but it was festive enchantment, all the equivalent. Praline confection was delight you could fracture into pieces with your palms. Crafted from pecans, caramelized sweetener, and fat, it was a southern custom that converted economy into richness. The formula was basic, but preparing it correctly demanded waiting, heating the sweetener to the ideal temperature before it formed into lustrous amber bunches. In many African-American cooking spaces, pralines weren't merely confection. They were tokens of generosity, presents for folks, educators, or the congregation singers. The aroma of caramel and toasted pecans saturated the atmosphere, adhering to garments and recollections equally. Chilling on protective paper, the confections solidified into brilliant rounds that resembled treasures. One taste and the crisp sweetness yielded to silky depth, absolute contentment from storage essentials. Every December, palms bundled them in protective paper or placed them into containers secured with fabric and wishes. Praline confection was evidence that offering could feel just as delicious as accepting. Seasoned cake with scorched sweetener coating was December in a solitary portion. The mixture awakened with cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves, the atmosphere itself becoming aromatic as it cooked. The coating, crafted from browned sweetener, blended over warmth until just before sharp provided the cake a complexity no standard icing could equal. In African-American dwellings, this was the confection that signaled the genuine beginning of Christmas, a cake as cozy and deep as the nights that assembled around the hearth. It was the sort of taste that surrounded you, recognizable and packed with narrative. Scorched sweetener demanded talent and feeling, the variety of method transferred from one palm to another, not documented anywhere. When the coating encountered the seasoning, it transformed into something superior, sugary, toasted, and heartfelt. Portions were offered with coffee or heated dairy, every morsel anchoring you in solace. It wasn't merely cake. It was remembrance prepared amber bronze and distributed with devotion. Jelly spiral cake was the variety of confection that caused youngsters marvel and grown-ups grin with awareness. It began as a delicate sponge cake prepared airy and bouncy, then coated with handcrafted preserve and twisted into a flawless coil. The exterior was covered with refined sweetener that sparkled like fresh ice beneath lamp glow. It appeared refined, but the charm was in its sincerity. Tender cake, basic preserve, no affectation. For many African-American households, the preserve spiral emerged at Christmas meals, an indication that festivity was ultimately in complete motion. It was a cake that journeyed successfully as well. Transported to congregation gatherings, bundled in protective paper, and fastened with cord. The initial portion displayed a whirl of hue that attracted silent appreciation before the utensil even reached the dish. It was joyful, sentimental, and remarkably gratifying. A confection that succeeded to seem both elegant and recognizable. Preserved spiral cake was the delicious ease of unity twisted into one. Coconut cream tart was what festive refinement resembled without opulence. The shell, crisp and rich, contained a smooth mixture crafted from eggs, dairy, sweetener, and a plentiful portion of grated coconut. As it cooked, the rims darkened and the middle rose ever so gently, producing a confection both fragile and substantial. It wasn't merely a tart, it was a fragment of tradition transferred through families of African-American cooking spaces. The aroma was absolute solace, a blend of roasted coconut and vanilla that remained in the atmosphere well after the stove cooled. It was frequently offered cold, the consistency silky and velvety, with every taste harmonizing richness and complexity. At Christmas assemblies, it rested modestly next to fruit loaves and custards, satisfied in its modest excellence. Coconut cream tart didn't request for notice. It gained it with every bite. It was evidence that basic components handled with attention could seem like indulgence on the palate. Cooked plum custard was a reflection of both English and Caribbean festive spread, converted by African American imagination. Rather than plums, it utilized preserved fruits, raisins, dates, and currants soaked in molasses, and occasionally spirits, abundant enough to scent the entire dwelling. The custard was cooked for periods in a fabric or container, becoming compact and deep like riches discovered on Christmas Day. Each portion was moist, seasoned, and aromatic. The sensation of custom transferred across waters. Households drizzled a heated sauce over the surface, frequently enhanced cream or spirits coating that dissolved into the texture. This confection held lineage in its scent, merging ancient realm and modern into something distinctly its own. It was an emblem of persistence and adjustment, a formula that declined to vanish despite shifting periods. Cooked plum custard wasn't merely consumed, it was respected, recalled, and cherished. Caramelized sweetener chess pieces were the confection of unity. The delicacy everyone understood would emerge at the congregation Christmas gathering. Sticky in the core, rich at the borders, and dusted with a touch extra sweetener on surface, they were difficult to decline. Crafted from storage essentials like eggs, grain, and caramelized sweetener, these pieces demonstrated that a few components could produce something heavenly. They cooked into a tiered wonder, crunchy foundation, tender filling center, and a brown topping that split beneath a utensil. Enclosed in metal or arranged in containers, they journeyed from cooking space to cooking space, never showing without a tail. For African American households, they symbolized beyond richness. They were welcome itself, offered openly and with devotion. You could depend on, at minimum, one portion to emerge on every sweet spread, vanishing quicker than anyone would acknowledge. Caramelized sweetener chest pieces were happiness sliced into flawless portions, a custom that never required revision. Citrus frost custard was airy as vapor, a vivid opposition to the substantial festive banquets that occupied most spreads. Crafted from citrus liquid, sweetener, and gelatin, it sparkled when cooled, like seized daylight in a container. African American bakers appreciated how it cleansed the taste buds, presenting something cool and spirited after all the tarts and custards. Beaten egg whites incorporated into the blend provided it a bubbly, vapor-like consistency, gentle enough to dissolve on the palate. It was refinement crafted from economy evidence that even basic storage components could seem indulgent. Offered in crystal containers, the soft amber custard resembled treasure beneath flame glow. It wasn't a bold confection, but it established its existence with silent elegance. Citrus frost custard showed everyone that festivity didn't constantly have to be heavy. It could be airy, clean, and packed with vitality. Some households would cool it through the night, allowing it firm flawlessly for Christmas midday when everyone required something vivid after the hearty banquet. A mouthful would vanish immediately, leaving behind the slight sharpness of citrus and the richness of distributed amusement. It held a particular grace in its modesty and quiet signal that elegance didn't require opulence. It was the sensation of cold season daylight, brief yet memorable, delicate yet packed with coziness. Handcrafted peppermint frozen cream was Christmas happiness preserved in moments. Back when ice boxes were uncommon treasures, households took shifts, manually rotating frozen cream in timber containers stuffed with ice and mineral. The outcome was silky, rich excellence touched with the fresh bite of peppermint. Even in the coldness of cold season, nobody objected about the chilled spoonfuls. It was a delicacy too uncommon to decline. Fragments of broken peppermint rods provided it hue, dotting the soft cream with celebratory crimson. In African American dwellings, preparing it was as much about the amusement that saturated the space as the confection itself. The steady rotation of the grip transformed into a household melody, signaling the festive essence in every rotation. Offered in little containers, it liquefied rapidly, but the recollection remained far extended. Peppermint frozen cream was evidence that happiness required no time period, only eager palms. Occasionally, it was prepared alongside vanilla or cocoa portions, so visitors could select their preference, but peppermint constantly emerged prominent. It felt like Christmas itself. The scent saturated the atmosphere as the cream solidified gradually. Every rotation waited with expectation. Youngsters observed keenly, anticipating the initial serving, while grown-ups grinned at the sentiment it held. Even well after the final morsel, its sharp richness remained. A basic delight converted into festive practice. Sugary molasses wrinkles were Christmas in biscuit shape, tender, sticky, and aromatic with ginger and clove. Their deep sweetened surfaces split as they cooked, creating fragile designs that resembled cold season ice. Crafted with storage essentials and a dash of molasses, they were a beloved in African American cooking spaces where economy encountered creativity. The aroma itself could make a dwelling seem celebratory, spiraling through every space like a vow. Once chilled, they were arranged into containers covered with protective paper, the variety that would afterward be fastened with cord and delivered to folks or educators. They felt of coziness, of hearth and lineage, and every taste held the gentle seasoning of attention. Youngsters enjoyed them with dairy, grown-ups with coffee, but everyone concurred they belonged to Christmas. Sugary molasses wrinkles were the biscuit interpretation of solace, basic yet memorable, evidence that devotion frequently arrives in little circular bundles. Occasionally, households crafted multiples at once, converting entire middays into biscuit-preparing sessions, each sheet rising from the stove with the identical amber bronze radiance. The initial portion seldom endured sufficient to chill, their scent attached to every garment and fabric. So even after the festivities concluded, the fragrance delivered the recollection flooding back. In every tender fragment was a signal that richness is finest when distributed. Fruit loaf bundled in metal was beyond custom than delicacy, prepared weeks prior with waiting and attention. Compact with preserved fruit, nuts, and an abundant drizzle of spirits or liquor, it matured gradually until the tastes blended together like household narratives retold each season. The aroma itself, sugary, seasoned, and mildly alcoholic, was distinctive. Every dwelling had its interpretation, some deeper with molasses, others paler with amber raisin and citrus rind, enclosed securely in metal and occasionally moistened again. It was a confection intended to endure through the time period. Folks traded portions bundled in protective paper, frequently secured with fabric, each one a symbol of companionship and trust. The initial taste was sticky, luscious, and packed with duration, evidence that positive things didn't occur rapidly. Even those who jested about disliking fruit loaves grinned when one showed. At their entrance, it wasn't about sensation as much as remembrance, a formula that transported affection across separation and seasons. Hickory seed beverage provided abundant nourishment from the woodlands when dairy was restricted or inaccessible. Hickory seeds were split and crushed into an aromatic mixture, then soaked in heated liquid and filtered to create a silky fluid packed with organic fats and nutrients. This beverage could be savored heated as a dawn drink or utilized to enhance cornbread and porridges, presenting sustenance without dependence on bovine dairy. The method originated directly from Native American customs, which African bakers discovered and modified to their personal requirements. Hickory plants were abundant throughout the Southeast, guaranteeing a consistent provision for those prepared to collect and split the rigid husks. Even after liberation, countryside households kept preparing hickory beverage for notable creations, and some Appalachian formulas still request it currently. Its silky taste and beneficial properties demonstrate how African American bakers merged regional wisdom and ancient realm techniques to produce nourishment of enduring worth. Hickory seed beverage remains as a silent but strong emblem of resourcefulness, connecting the woodland's abundance to a custom of persistence and cooking talent. Pan-fried, unripe tomatoes presented a vivid sharpness and a gratifying crispness that rendered them a beloved in roadside diners and household cooking spaces across the South. Solid, immature tomatoes were cut substantial, coated in flavored cornmeal, and skillet-fried in bubbling fat until their borders became amber and crunchy. The sour taste of the unripe tomato mellowed as it prepared, merging with the flavorful covering to generate a sensation both spirited and soothing. Workers and wanderers discovered this creation at modest diners along the paths between assemblies and protests, a pleasant pause for a swift and remarkable dish. Grandmothers offered them at dwelling as well, frequently with a portion of silky sauce or a dusting of garden herbs from the plot. Pan-fried, unripe tomatoes transformed into beyond a bite. They symbolize tantalized the imagination of Southern bakers who converted an premature harvest into something notable. Their joyful crispness and vivid taste delivered vitality and a feeling of location to assemblies that powered the civil rights struggle and showed everyone of the innovative kitchens that maintained morale elevated. Persimmon custard was a sugary method to convert what the earth provided openly into solace for households with minimal else. Natural persimmons were gathered in the autumn, their sour fruit maturing into richness after cold. Homemakers crushed the flesh with eggs, dairy, and grain when they possessed it, preparing it into a compact, tender custard. The creation saturated kitchens with a cozy scent, delivering a feeling of festivity to regular moments. Youngsters adored it because it seemed like confection, even when sweetener was limited and the custard leaned more humble than polished. Persimmons developed natural in numerous regions of the South, rendering them a present for households enduring through separation and hardship. The custard was never elaborate, but it held a richness that eased the boundaries of difficult periods. Over the seasons, it has disappeared from typical recall, yet it once represented as a signal that existence occasionally felt sugary, even when the realm beyond seemed harsh and unjust. Flame-lit midnight gatherings converted congregations into havens of tranquility, remembrance, and worship. The illumination lowered gradually until solely the gentle shimmer of flames saturated the space, projecting amber on pale congregation garments. Each glow symbolized a plea, an existence, or a gratitude murmured into the silence. The singers started to perform, tones ascending softly at first, then expanding into melodies that saturated every area of the chapel. The minister spoke with respect, his voice quiet and firm, showing everyone that illumination still radiates in shadow. Households sat pressed together, palms joined, spirits elevated. Youngsters' gazes sparkled wide as they grasped flames too firmly, wax trickling onto their digits unaware. Beyond, ice collected on vehicle glass, but within, coziness emanated like blessing itself. When midnight arrived, a quiet swept the space before the closing melody rose, clear, powerful, and packed with belief. Individuals departed transformed, their essences brighter, their souls brimming. The evening remained in remembrance well after the flames were extinguished. Roasted squash kernels converted the leftovers of pumpkins and native squashes into a crucial supply of fat and nutrients. After the meat was prepared for broths or tarts, kernels were cleansed, mildly salted, and arranged near the fireplace to dehydrate before roasting. This basic method created a crispy, nutrient-dense bite that preserved effectively through the cold season and could be crushed into powder or utilized to enrich broths. Comparable kernel roasting customs existed throughout West Africa, where pumpkin and melon kernels were treasured for both taste and nourishment, and those methods traveled the Atlantic with enslaved individuals. Over duration, roasted pumpkin kernels transformed into a recognizable autumn delicacy in American dwellings, distributed at festivals and savored during harvest festivities. The custom demonstrates how African cooking recollection blended with native harvests, producing a nourishment that shifted from requirement to seasonal delight. Roasted squash kernels persist to emerge in contemporary kitchens and produce stands, bearing with them the chronicle of cautious preservation and the innovative essence that converted every segment of the vegetation into sustenance. Peach crumble held the richness of Georgia groves and the solace of Ahia Chatti, confection connected to Martin Luther King's Atlanta origins. Succulent peaches were cut and cooked with sweetener and a touch of cinnamon before being covered with biscuit mixture or a rich covering that cooked to amber excellence. The simmering fruit saturated kitchens with an aromatic vapor that indicated a delight for every perception. Offered heated with garden cream or a serving of handcrafted frozen cream, peach crumble presented welcome and dignity in regional harvests. Congregation assemblies and strategy sessions frequently concluded with abundant helpings of this cherished confection, delivering grins and a sensation of dwelling to workers distant from their personal households. The creation honored the prosperity of the South while strengthening the connections of fellowship and the richness of collective endeavor. Peach crumble remains an eternal symbol of Georgia solace, showing everyone that the struggle for fairness was maintained by tastes that expressed of household, custom, and lasting aspiration. Sun-preserved apples were in crucial endurance nourishment, crafted by cutting apples delicate and arranging them out to dehydrate in the sunlight. Households loaded baskets and fabrics with fruit, converting fresh harvests into provisions that could endure through the cold season. The preserved portions were sticky and sugary, consumed as bites or restored in tarts and broths. Homemakers appreciated them because they maintained abundance when preservation was limited. Youngsters anticipated them, taking preserved fragments as soon as they chilled. Preserving fruit indicated that a positive harvest could be extended into scarce periods when minimal else was accessible. The method demanded waiting and cautious observation, but it provided households a feeling of stability. Sun-preserved apples transformed into segment of storage platforms throughout the South, frequently preserved in containers or pouches for subsequent utilization. Though mostly vanished in contemporary kitchens, they were once critical for endurance, a method to seize the richness of summertime and transport it into the toughest cold seasons of the Jim Crow South. Kool-Aid beverage containers converted every Christmas assembly into a festival of vibrancy and richness. The fluid glistened beneath cooking space illumination, spinning with sherbet bubbles that sparkled like ice in a vessel. The bubbling noise of ginger soda blended with laughter as youngsters gathered near, observing utensils blend enchantment into movement. Mothers or relatives in garments constantly demanded one final sampling, acting to verify for sensation, but grinning at the justification for another drink. The aroma of sweetener and fruit saturated the atmosphere, combining with the smell of pork cooking in the stove and evergreen from the plant. No celebration spread was finished without that radiant focal point, encircled by disposable vessels anticipating to be loaded. When the initial scoop, dispensed, applause, and conversation emerged like routine, it was basic, vivid, and packed with vitality. Evidence that happiness didn't require cost, just creativity. Kool-Aid beverage wasn't merely a drink. It was the brilliance of youth itself, dispensed abundantly for everyone. Natural grape essence linked plantation kitchens to the indigenous prosperity of the American South. Muscadine and Scuppernong grapes developed wild along barriers and woodland borders, presenting a reliable late summertime harvest. Enslaved laborers collected the bunches and pressed them manually to generate a sharp liquid that could be aged slightly for a revitalizing beverage or heated into a thick essence utilized to flavor grains and vegetables. This method reflected West African customs of utilizing fruit concentrates to enhance flavorful creations. After liberation, muscadine beverage and handcrafted grape preserves transformed into signatures of Southern foodways, and modest farms still create them currently. The cautious collecting and gradual cooking demanded waiting and talent, characteristics that characterize the preparation of those who generated the maximum of every natural supply. Natural grape essence represents as both a functional formula and a recognition to how African American bakers blended ancient realm methods with modern realm components, creating a sensation that persists to influence territorial preserves and drinks throughout the Carolinas and Georgia. Collared vegetables with pork knuckles held the sensation of persistence and the gradual waiting of Southern preparation, characteristics that reflected the firm determination of the civil rights movement. Garden collard foliage were cleansed cautiously and cooked for periods with cured pork knuckles, onions, and a hint of vinegar until the vegetables mellowed into a delicate, flavorful broth. The cured meat enhanced the liquid recognized as cooking broth, a nutrient-dense fluid that households drank or absorbed with cornbread to seize every portion of sustenance. These vegetables were offered at fellowship assemblies and evening strategy gatherings, where workers and folks distributed dishes that fortified both form and determination. Youngsters discovered early that the extended cooking vessel symbolized custom and aspiration, holding the sensation of families who withstood struggle with dignity. Collared vegetables with pork knuckles continue a breathing emblem of determination and the conviction that modest components, when handled with attention, can deliver mighty solace and enduring bond during periods of immense difficulty and transformation. Hoe biscuits were beyond just a dish. They were endurance prepared into delicate cornmeal circles right on a surface or even on the level edge of a hoe above the flame. Households without grain or leavening depended on cornmeal, mineral and liquid, occasionally incorporating a bit fat if they possessed it. The biscuits prepared rapidly and could be consumed bare with syrup or next to legumes and vegetables. For numerous, they were the regular sustenance, reliable and substantial, even when currency was depleted and options were limited. Youngsters matured with hoe biscuits as segment of existence, discovering early that a portion of powder could nourish everyone if you understood how to extend it. They were modest yet mighty, evidence that cleverness maintained individuals alive during seasons of struggle. Though seldom witnessed now, hoe biscuits remain an emblem of power, innovation, and the determination to endure against every barrier. Their modesty holds a chronicle of persistence that still communicates when they are recalled on Southern spreads. Christmas congregation performances were the pinnacle of every festive time, where belief encountered imagination and youngsters transformed into narrators. The Nativity awakened beneath overhead illumination as Mary, Joseph, and sages traversed the passages in robes and metallic headpieces. Mothers modified halos, fathers arranged portable seats, and everyone murmured prompts from the forward bench. Singers performed "O Holy Night" with a pulse that seemed like aspiration itself. It was beyond a display. It was fellowship in action, a breathing tale expressed through youthful tones that wavered but never ceased. The recognition that emerged wasn't for excellence, but for involvement, dignity, and the guarantee of persistence. These presentations wove households together, showing everyone that Christmas was regarding belief, not magnificence. The congregation carried scents of evergreen, fragrance, and flame candles, and the atmosphere hummed with happiness. Even after the drapes shut, the resonances of those melodies remained well into the evening. Which of these vanished Christmas confections would you restore to your personal spread? Express your beloved in the remark. And if you experience the coziness of Chronicle in every morsel, don't neglect to approve the video and follow for additional narratives that feel like home.